basically going to be around about 40-50 minutes of drama.
Drama. There's no drama around me, Himanshu. I'm steady Eddie. He got really angry that the salesman that was turning up late, to a point where very quickly this guy is really getting agitated, and he made these off-the-cuff comments. He said, "Do you know what, Andy? I have a right to throw you out of my window."
What's the one thing that is completely different and the one thing that never changes?
AI is taking over the world, and I think there's lots of people who are going to hit those barriers going forward.
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. And this is Himanshu Garg, CEO of Dynamics Monk. Just to give a very brief background of Andy, and we will discover a lot more about you in the whole series. Andy is an MVP, and for the last 4 years, he has been working as an MVP in Intune and Microsoft Power Platform and whatnot, right? And he's a 30-year-old veteran. So my first question to you, Andy, without any drama, is in the last 30 years in IT, what's the one thing that is completely different and the one thing that never changes?
Well, I think in the IT industry, it's been a slow burn to generally automate things, right? I mean, we can look at the different products and features that they offer, but the automation of what we do, how we do it, and the integration of products, right? Because we started off with way back years where you got IBM, you've got all the different computer systems and companies producing their own software operating systems, and gradually it all came down to standard. And that's partly why I guess I have a career really in the Microsoft, because it's so widely used, right? So it gives you a good grounding for having a career off that. But what is always standard is that we want to automate and improve the way we do things quicker. I mean, that's the purpose of computing, really, isn't it? Right? To take away effort and time from ourselves to make things easier. And gradually over time, that's been accelerating to the point at which, AI is taking over the world and basically making things quicker than we can imagine, right? And I think we're reaching a point now where we need to kind of stop and think, actually protect what we're doing, understand what we're doing, govern what we're doing, secure what we're doing to a point where there's not going to be any dramas, right? We need to control the effect of this evolution, this innovation that's happening. And that's really where a lot of the industry is kind of focused at the moment, in my opinion. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we go forward.
I think that's very, very intelligently said, Andy. And so since you have been in the industry for some time now, this automation requirement has been existing since the very start, right? But what is that? And of course, it's evolving pretty fast with the use of AI, cloud, and ChatGPT, whatnot. But what is the major crux that you see? What is that automation requirement that really is there versus all the hype that you see in the market?
I think if you ask that question of different people, you're going to get a different answer, in my opinion, right? And some people will say it's standard, but there's a time element to it. There is the consistency of what you're doing. You're leaving it to a program rather than multiple people that have a little bit of input here and a little bit of input there. So you're eradicating potential error points, bottlenecks. So there's time, but there's the completeness and consistency of what we're doing, I would say. And the automation is allowing us to construct that in a way to improve those and eradicate some of those. Not completely, but gradually over time, we're improving that consistency. At the same time, this is why I say we need to kind of hold back, because if you look at many of the online services that are available, let's take the events industry. Okay. If you look at how they write the use of the innovations of AI at the moment, they will tell you, yes, there's lots of people vibe coding and producing software very quickly, but it's not consistent. How can you support? How can you manage software that you don't intrinsically know the detail of? How can you run a system that might have hundreds, if not thousands of people attending an event that hasn't been stress tested to the point of its key function, right? So it may work, it may present, it might look pretty, but can it operate under intense situations that it's meant to do? And this is where we're going to be hitting a number of barriers going forwards, and people will present themselves as, look at me, I've got this, it's really good, it will do everything that company A, B, and C does, and it looks prettier and it's cheaper, but actually it is, you have to back that up with a service, with a support on top of that. And I think there's lots of people who are going to hit those barriers going forward.
Interesting. See, I would like to share a personal anecdote from my days in Microsoft. So we did build a pre-sales accelerator where we have where you add a scenario and a tech lead will come in and say, okay, to execute this business scenario, you have to write these many custom codes, right? And then you define the complexity, whether it is small, medium, or complex, or very complex, and it gives a sort of t-shirt size. Right. So I'm talking about an accelerator that was kind of automated, but with the kind of space that we are in right now, you give the requirements to a thing like Claude and it comes back with a sort of a t-shirt sizing, a project timeline and efforts. So of course, there are a lot of caveats around it. So what I'm just trying to understand from you is, based on your career in IT, specifically the pre-sales that you have done, how is AI really helping to amp up the game? And what are your views around it?
Again, you can have different views on this. My personal view is, right now we haven't reached maturity, or let me just say that we're far from maturity at the moment. We are establishing the key players in the market, the key products in the market, and eventually, as normal innovation follows a cycle, we will get to those points. So whatever you're adopting now might not be what you're adopting next year. And for that reason, you have to understand what's going on holistically around the industry. And that's a difficult thing to do because it's moving so quickly. But what has it achieved? It has achieved so much already in a very short time period. And I follow the Microsoft rule, if you like, of looking at all the way it's evolving. We've gone from the end user on the desktop to increase their productivity, and that will continue. And I think in that area, you're going to see the biggest gains because there are real tangible ways of reducing your time and effort that you spend during the day. What that does, it frees up more time to what people say are being more productive, right? But it might free up more time so people can have more leisure time, right? It really depends on your outlook and what have you. But so for sure, from an end user point of view, it's freed up time. It's allowed you to take time to think about what you do next, be more productive, be more thoughtful in what you do and how you do things. So that from that perspective, it's great. And now we're kind of moving vastly into the agentic world, right? The back end automation of AI. And with Microsoft, you've got co-work coming out, which is really, in my eyes, kind of targeting, again, going back to the end user. I like the whole agentic side of things. That's where I have a focus right now, because for me, that's the exciting bit. This is the engine that you can speed up for companies. While you're sleeping, it's doing all your calculations for you. It's sending out all your invoices. And you might argue that existed already, right? But it also makes you think about things you didn't know about, right? It will analyze your data to a point and bring out information to say, okay, you're not very productive, or this process is really inefficient. And you might not even have thought of it. It might not have been on your radar. So it's allowing us to identify other ways of improving our business as well. So it's the intelligence that it teases out, plus the improvements of streamlining, how business is run. There's so many different ways you can look at this, as you know yourself. But for me, the agentic side is really with the exciting part of AI.
Amazing. So I think we'll have a lot more to talk about AI, agentic AI specifically, right? Given and I would like to play devil's advocate specifically when it comes to agentic AI, based on what is going on in the market. But before we go further, I would really love to understand your arc in your journey, right? From infrastructure to pre-sales and unexpected roles. What surprised you? And what made you go from infrastructure to pre-sales and pre-sales to other roles? Would love to understand from your viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for my current company for 29 years now, so which is probably unheard of. Really, there's not many people that do that. But in that time, I've had the ability to move around different technical teams, and I started off in the coding world. I developed, COBOL kicks back, financial systems way back, and then moved into kind of intranet services where I was doing, the company I worked for had one of the best, if you like, early on intranet services where you could, find anyone in a company that had 100,000 people, what's their contact details, which, big companies move very slowly, but how do I find these contact details? So, and that seems very basic, right? But in the early days of the internet and HTML and XML, it was something you had to, it wasn't easy to host and get working. So yeah, I centered around a lot of intranet services and developed some web services around that. I then moved on to kind of unified collaboration and an email system. So I then kind of became more of a focus around the Microsoft stack, but also worked on some IBM systems as well, and managed customers and endpoints. I was an engineer, but I had a lot of interface with customers. So instantly, I'm getting that exposure fairly young. I'm going along with account managers, talking to customers, and that kind of gave me an insight to that world, which I enjoyed. And then from that point onwards, I was given an opportunity to kind of move into an infrastructure role. So I was looking after the NHS in the UK, and I became kind of a designer on overseeing, 4,000 plus servers on a daily basis for the NHS. So there's a lot of design element in that. So intricacies of the networking, of the server infrastructure, keeping them up to date. So I automatically, I kind of developed knowledge around that. So, I've got development, I've got infrastructure, I've got customer interfacing, right? And it starts creating, a knowledge base of formulating kind of my own thoughts in the way things should be run, not just following the book, not just asking another engineer, but actually having an opinion on the way things should be designed and run. I did move around a few other places as well, technical areas, but then I grounded around about 10 years ago in a kind of consultancy pre-sales role. I was given that opportunity. And prior to that, I'd been also managing teams, right? So I was a manager for people as well. And despite there was an element of enjoying that, it wasn't where my heart was, right? I'll be honest, because I like to get my hands on code. I like to get my hands on products, test them, try and break them, see how I can integrate them. And that's just the way my mind ticks. So in the consultancy world, I was given a big customer to work with initially, but very few resources to help me. So I decided to throw myself in at the deep end and come up to speed with the whole Windows stack and how they were all being managed at the time. And I was put in front of a customer that basically they said they wanted a strategy, a 3 to 5 year strategy for 3,000 desktops. How is it going to be configured? How is it logistically going to be, delivered to the person, set up with the person, managed after that? So it was a full end-to-end kind of service contract with them. And I had very little, or I needed to update my knowledge. So I jumped in with 2 feet. I learned as much as I can. And from that point onwards, it became a daily task for me. And that was probably, if I'm honest, that was probably the start of my MVP journey, because I've got degrees. I've got a couple of degrees. I've done lots of exams in my time, right? But as I've got older, I I don't like them. I'm honest. I don't like doing them. And the way I would learn is not by sitting reading a book, but it's actually doing something and learning it. So I set up a YouTube channel kind of around lockdown with a colleague of mine. And I thought, what better way of learning than to take a topic, and at the time for me was kind of Intune and Windows, to put my face on a video and actually try and talk knowledgeably about a topic, right? And in order to do that, I thought I had to learn it first. I had to know. You click this, you click that, and this will give you the output of that. I needed to know that, so that was my intrinsic way of learning, and it fairly successful. But at the end of the day, it's what I got out of it rather than what I was necessarily giving other people. And then it kind of evolved from there. So, I mean, that's a whirlwind through my IT career, but luckily in some ways I've been with the same company that has supported and given me a variety of roles that I can be in, and that's allowed me to be in that situation. But I think, in all honesty, I've made decisions for myself based on what I like, what I followed, what I've tested, what I've always been curious about things. So if I'm curious about how to do something, I'll follow that through, and I'll go to the right person to ask it. And I think this is sometimes in people's careers, some people are quite happy to sit there and just do what they're told, and other people are, no, why are you doing it? They'll challenge it, right? And they're the people that will innovate in the company, in my eyes.
Interesting. I think this was very exciting to hear about. And Andy, there are certain aspects of what you just told me resonated with my personal journey as well, specifically the XML, the WCF services, and whatnot. And still remember the time when troubleshooting such services was really a nightmare given the current circumstances. You now just ship the code into Claude and it just gives you the end result pretty quickly, right? Uh, but I would really love to explore more what you did in the NHS, and because it's a very big organization, and working with those many services, maintaining them, managing them, managing the stakeholders. How was that kind of experience for you? And just to come back to the current context with respect to AI playing a major force now, right? How, if AI would have been at that point in time, how it could have helped you in terms of being more efficient, faster? I don't know. From that perspective.
Well, technology itself, just from available memory, faster CPUs, the hardware itself would have injected a big improvement. How would it, if you overlay an automated or an AI solution across that, then that just enhances that, right? And at the same time, it would move the discussion point away from more hands-on to agentware that's on the devices that is giving you that feedback and knowledge about how your devices are running. But the whole patching scenario, updating drivers, updating OS, is this compatible with certain operating of certain applications? The troubleshooting around that used to be very manual and very tiresome. All of that is kind of abstracted now to the software layer, so it gives and the network layer as well, right? So the network layer itself is giving you that feedback. To this day, I'll be honest, the Windows platform has lots of problems in the error codes and all of that just are almost impossible, right? They're not user friendly at all, and there's lots of systems that are like that, but I've never understood why Microsoft haven't put more effort into that personally. But when you overlay these new network layers and software solutions on top of it, it allows you to be alerted quicker, so you can react quicker to problems. You can actually be preemptive in terms of how you manage those servers. Whereas before, I would probably say it was more reactive. Now you can plan ahead and foresee. For example, you can see where your disk is running out, right? You can see where your CPU usage is being consumed, and you can adjust. And obviously virtual servers as well, was in those days, it was expensive, and it wasn't as easy to run and set up. Nowadays it's it's standard. So you can, if a server goes down, you can quickly run a server up within seconds, and it can take over, and failover of those becomes a lot easier. So yeah, technology has allowed for a lot of that to happen, which means it takes out a lot of the time consuming and manual effort that used to go on, I would say. My role was really overseeing those servers. So it was a clinical system, and they were on that clinical system, there was a lot of integration of data going between one type of server to another type of server. And I had to oversee a lot of those decisions that were being made and saying, yes, that can happen. But you had to base it around the capacity of those servers at the time. And that goes back to your question. What I used to do could be a part of it could be completely automated now, because if it can on the fly ad hoc work out whether server A is got the capacity, whether server A can handle that bandwidth, and if it doesn't, it will run another server up for a period of time, or it will just direct it to another server or another location. That wasn't as possible in those days. Now the automation of that has taken over. So it's not without problems. There's still problems, but it would have made my job a lot easier. Let's say that.
No, absolutely. And what about alerting and governance around maintaining such kind of a huge infrastructure, right? So if like earlier, I'm sure there must be a lot of governance systems like Azure Monitor or similar things. But with the advent of AI, I'm assuming that it could also help in terms of consolidating those alerts, maybe sending them as a P1 occurs onto your dashboard. You are immediately available, or there is an agent which can come back and check the respective troubleshooting steps. I don't know.
It brings in a whole new era of problems, right? So we've spoken about the things, the improvements that have been introduced and make our life easier. But at the same time, by connecting everything into the cloud now, it means that it brings in these vulnerabilities from the likes of AI and access over internet protocols, which before, to be honest, I worked on a lot of air blocked systems. So we ran the servers in our own server farms. Nowadays, you don't do that, right? So you've got to control what can and what can't connect into those data centers. Network is not, I know networks, but it's not my forte. But I know it opens up a whole new world of guardrails that you need to enforce, permissions and everything, which is really, why a lot of the security of platforms is a mainstay for consultancies and IT companies, because if you don't have that knowledge, then you're going to struggle, personally.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, let me bring the conversation back to Intune and your pre-sale lens around it, right? But before that, I have a very interesting question to ask, right? Let's assume that a customer is about to make a bad buying decision or bad decision about procuring some software pieces or something of that sort. But even after your consultation, they still decide to go ahead. What do you do? Like, what do you feel and do about it?
Wow, you put me on the spot here. I've been in those positions before, for sure. Let me just say this, and in my experience is that at the end of the day, you could be selling someone IT software or IT solutions, or you could be selling them a new extension on the back of their house, right? How you influence and guide that person depends on the connection that you make with that person, right? It's down to people at the end of the day and communication. If you have someone that says, no, I'm using Google, even if it means they're going to use multiple different software platforms and it's going to cost them more money to manage, connect, integrate, right? If they're sold on that and that someone else has told them that, you can only go so far in influencing them. You can highlight, the pros and the cons, what they get out of it, the expense that might be associated. And if you've got that connection with that person, you can probably go that far and say, listen, I can guide you down this route, but I personally think the route you're taking is the wrong one for reason A, B, and C. And you have to let them kind of go and sit on that and actually talk that through with their internal colleagues, and maybe they'll get a balanced view. If someone isn't prepared to do that, then you can't influence that person. That's just the nature of people, unfortunately. If you've got someone who's intelligent enough that is willing, if they paid for a consultant to come in and they seriously take the time to listen to you, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take your route either, but they should at least try and understand your point of view and test you to the point of, well, why would I do this? But I'm using this. So how can that work in that situation? And I guess I like that. I like that because it shows that someone actually cares about what they're doing. They actually care about the time that they're spending with you to try and investigate, that solution type. And that tells me that means I'm going to give them more time and effort to try and help them make their decision, whether it's to go with us as a company or not. So the answer really is you can't always influence everyone. You can't always, but you can just guide them with as much knowledge as you have. And there's lots of situations where I've been put in to go and see a customer where they completely changed the discussion, right? And what you thought you were going to discuss absolutely has no, it's a completely different topic. So what do you do in those situations? And I've always said to people, some people that I've mentored is that be honest. Just be honest. I'll tell you a little story, which is funny, but I went to see a customer years and years ago, and it was meant to be with the salesman or the account manager that was holding a monthly review with this customer. And this guy wasn't liked really within his organization, right? He was the IT director, but he wasn't really liked. In fact, his son worked for the same company and he didn't like him either. And he got really angry that the salesman that was turning up late, right, to this meeting, and I was supporting the salesman to a point where very quickly this guy is walking around the room, he's effing and blinding and really getting agitated. And he made these off the cuff comments. He said, "Do you know what, Andy?" And he said, "I have a right to throw you out of my window." Right? Some people you just can't reason with. You just can't. So you have to kind of take the good with the bad and do as much as you can.
Also use expletives. We can beep it out as part of the podcast. Sometimes we add it to it, but completely agree. There's really little much that you can do, but understood your calmness, how you have handled it. Interesting. So about the Intune, I think since you have developed certain tools like Intune Q-Links and Intune Automate, and what is the story behind it? Why did you build it for free for the community to start with?
The Q-Links one started off, really, it was a basic HTML helpful site that people, that I wanted to use for myself. I was still kind of coming up thinking, well, where do I go? There wasn't so many websites around other than going to the Microsoft sites, and Microsoft wasn't really linking off to community people that were helpful. So I started doing it myself for my own reference point. And I thought, do you know what? I'm doing this. Why not help others?
Interject here, sorry. But for the audience, if you would like to spend like a couple of minutes to just explain what the tool is all about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was kind of getting there in a way. It started off for a very useful links to useful community blogs, to sometimes websites, applications, and people in the community that you can learn from. It was about helping me and helping others learn quickly, right, by not having to search around different websites to get that information. So I devised this Q-Links, and it then became a little bit more intrinsic, more complex in that it started providing more categories of information, and it was focused around Microsoft Intune, right? Because that's where my focus was. And so I that developed over time. I had a lot of people approaching me saying, thanks, it's been really useful in my learning career, my path. And I've always just developed that more and more into different categories to a point where the latest version, I've used some AI, I've built a new website, I've automated it with AI, so that I can literally get RSS feeds off people. I can decide I can go to those websites quickly and decide what ones I think will be useful to people, create newsletters, automatically create LinkedIn posts on the back of a selection of things that have come in. I can do the full administration so much easier, and I developed all of that admin site through AI and the front end through AI. But the data and the structure and the categories of information is there to help people in the different areas of managing the Windows platform and using Intune, right? And helping people learn effectively and take the different routes. So that's Q-Links. It's got to a point where, yeah, I get, quite a few hits on it. I get quite a bit of feedback on it. And it always started as something that I was using for myself, but also wanted to share for other people to benefit from. So I just followed that all the way through, and I never really thought of it as something to use for MVP, but actually, in hindsight, it has, because if it's helped other people learn and it's helped other people collaborate and understand who the key content providers are, um, and connect people a bit more, then actually it is a tool that is assisting people. So it became one of the key parts of my my area. But you know, that is something that you don't really need too much technical knowledge in some ways. You have to decide what's useful and categorize it. But actually, the doing, getting my own blogs, getting my own videos as part of the collection of content was, part and parcel of that decision as well.
Interesting. So, what are your current plan or future plans for the tool? Are you planning to integrate it with some sort of a AI hook, or maybe bring in more functionality and take it from Intune to overall Power Platform and whatnot?
My current plans are, and I'm trying to decide, Himanshu, which path I take here, but is open it out to be more of a M365 repository and learning path, right? So in the last year or so, I've changed my focus more to, the Power Platform, to AI, and developing solutions around that, and Purview and what have you. So I want to open that out to a wider audience, because actually the whole M365 stack audience is far bigger than Intune, far, far bigger. So I got to decide whether I incorporate that as part of Q-Links or I start a M365 Q-Links. I haven't decided that yet. But what you'll notice is there's a number of other MVPs that have gone down this path as well, right? Some of which have kind of used some of my ideas, others have got a different angle, and a lot of them are vibe coded to get these websites up, because the number of tools that are available is just kind of it's just exploded, and that alone is interesting. That's an interesting area that I have a lot of interest in. But I think, yeah, I think it will be AI and the M365. That's probably where it will naturally evolve to.
I'm sure that you might heard Satya came back almost last year when he specifically proclaimed that SaaS is dead. Of course, that comment in itself was alluding to something different altogether, but it went viral up and down. What are your thoughts around it? Like, what do you really think is happening? Is SaaS really dead, or is there new ways of of customer workflows and whatnot? What do you think about
Before I answer that, let me ask you, what is your view of it?
it? Well, so spending last couple of decades on the business applications, I probably feel that the way we used to implement a SaaS application for the customer, um, it was predominantly IT kind of dominating the business rather than other way around, right? So IT team used to come in and say, okay, we have this classic product, and your requirement needs to fit in somewhere here and there, and we will take this much amount of time.
if we have to add a field, this is going to happen. And, there were a lot of shenanigans around it. What I think AI has done now, whether the product is Dynamics, whether it is SAP, whether it's Oracle or Salesforce, what I've seen is a tremendous shift in terms of efficient implementations. One of the biggest issue that we used to get was that customer generally didn't used to have a formed up requirement. So we have to spend a lot of time with the customer to come up with the user stories, ensure that they are in a shape and format that the development team can understand. But I think the customers are very smart now. Everybody uses ChatGPT or Claude now, and they already have a very fair idea of what they really need to get done. In fact, they are coming up with their mock-ups themselves, so it saves a lot of time. What I think is happening is the bulky subscription costs with around SaaS applications that really needs to get sorted. And platforms like Dataverse really have a lot to contribute in terms of expansion. And Microsoft itself is taking a lot of strive towards doing vibe coding within Power Platform. So you provide the scope of work or the requirements, and it spends around 70-80% of the app that you really want. So I think developers' jobs are cut down to become customer advocate, just understand what customer needs, make it more specific to what AI can understand and develop it. So implementation lifecycle has shortened up. But what I still believe, SaaS is not going to go anywhere, is going to stay put. The enterprise suite applications that gets built is very difficult to mimic, at least with the current version of AIs that we have. And Agentic AI over the top of existing SAP application is the way to go. Delegating a lot of portion of what you do repetitively to the agentic AIs, that just helps you focus on what you really have to do as part of the business. That is just get more customers, sell your own product, and whatnot, right? So that is my take. But of course, I would love to hear from you. What is your?
I think that the leap in technology is just the next step of how we evolve, right? It doesn't mean it's the death of SaaS, right? And I agree with you. If you take a system that a service that's out there, and we kind of touched on this before, right? In the events industry, there's a hell of a lot that goes under the hood with creating a stable service. Testing, volume testing, penetration testing. So the boring jobs that people don't want to talk about in lots of, obviously there's the design, and the design of that system, that application and platform needs to meet a requirement. So now what you're seeing is people that have got other jobs have the ability to prototype. And I actually think that in a way that's a positive thing, because it means someone has an idea. Say they're a salesperson selling car parts, right? If they have an idea that says, do you know what would be really good is if we could get these parts quicker, or we could marry up parts from a Ford to a Renault very quicker, that we could get it out the door quicker, we could sell it quick, right? And they can produce something that actually has got a business benefit and prototype it. That's about as far as they're going to be able to take it, in my eyes. Because if their focus is a salesperson, they'll go back to selling, right? And the IT staff and the developers and the designers just need to evolve their work, their roles in how they design and bring that product through. But actually, the product sets that we use to get that end goal are changing, right? And the roles are changing, and there's going to be an injection of different skills. So there's going to be one step taking away, but a new technology step coming in. It's just going to be quicker and more efficient, and you're probably, like you mentioned, getting to that end goal quicker. But it's just a change in the way we do things. So some people will move away from. There's already trends where people are taking things back in house, right? And I think that will become a mainstay for some time. And it's partly the reason why I started having an interest in the Power Platform, right, myself, to solve business solutions. And I was constantly saying to myself, why isn't the user interface better on this? Why isn't it better on this? It was frustrating to me when everyone else was bringing in all these new, nice, modern front ends. And then suddenly, I mean, we're talking only months where this is kind of coming and around, where someone's just said, right, now you can do A, B, and C, vibe coding, inject it into Power Platform, inject it to code apps, GitHub, all of these different Microsoft product sets, which are merging together. And it's an extremely complex area to understand at the moment because it's evolving so quickly. Anyone that can articulate where the industry is going using these tools, to me, is worth their weight in gold, because it's a moving target daily. So I coming back to your question, I agree with you. I think we're a long way off that. I think people will continuously pay for SaaS services, but they'll prototype more and more themselves, and they'll bring some of those services back in-house, but it will still be there. It's a long-winded way of answering your question, I know, Himanshu.
No, I think it's so. I am sure that you might heard there is a term that is coined now, which people have started adding to their bio, which is vibe coding fixer,
No,
right?
see,
You haven't seen it, so it's a very interesting term. What happens is like, and I'm making a lot of fun out of it with my team. That a CEO comes over the weekend and say, "Oh, I have this new fantastic idea. Let me create an app for you," right? And he goes in and does a vibe coding, gets a Claude's Max subscription and whatnot. And then at the end of the day, he sees something which is interesting and says, "Okay, team, now can you deploy it?" Right?
yeah,
And when they start deploying it, they start seeing that some of the nuts and bolts are not fixing together, right?
yeah, yes,
So I remember building a product and shipping it to my team, and then uh, they're taking around about 2 weeks to fix it and deploy it.
yeah.
And then we really had a lot of fun out of it. But now people and this kind of skill set that is coming out, which is vibe coding fixer, where you actually come back and say, okay, some of the parts of your app are not following the architectural pattern because the way you executed it, uh, you might have missed certain aspects, right?
Yeah.
So they come in, make your app stable, and then deploy it, and then they maintain it for you. But let's hope that SaaS is really not dead, because I'm specifically banking out on SaaS. But um, um, uh, so there is another question that I have in mind, Andy. Like when a client tells you that they want an AI strategy, right?
Mhm.
What do you make out of that? Like what kind of strategy they really want to hear about it? Is it like a data strategy? Is it like they want to get uh, um, get all their systems talking to same box, AI spinning out reports? What exactly would that mean for a customer? Because what I've seen in the market is like everybody wants to jump on the AI bandwagon, but at the end of the day, the data that gives you that kind of help is very fractured and is at multiple places. The data governance is not there, etc. So what do you think is the right AI strategy for an enterprise who really doesn't have anything right now and they want to jump on it? So what are the steps that they should take before
So
implementing?
when I approach this, I don't approach it from an AI strategy point of view. I always approach it from a business automation and AI strategy, and the AI element comes at the end, right? If you follow a certain path of automation to a point where you analyze what you want to do, what are your pain points, what are you trying to fix, what are you trying to improve, you tackle them first, and the data and your security, and then you overlay what AI might bring to the table on top of that. Okay, because until you get to that point, until you've normalized your processes, your data, your integration, all of those things that might be an issue for you in your day-to-day running. You're always going to have those problems if you don't solve them first. So it's business strategy and automation and then AI. But at the same time, you've got customers that purely just want to go down the AI. They tell you that they're ready, or they're not. Most of the time, they're not ready. They don't quite know, because unless you study this stuff and keep in touch with the daily updates that come out, you're not necessarily going to be up to date with the latest stuff. So you have to tackle it from understanding the top 5, 10, depending on size of company, what their pain points are, and really what they're trying to achieve, and really get the company internally to agree that, not just a single conversation. So it's an assessment, a business assessment, which then they take away, they discuss internally and come back. And it's a journey, right? I don't like using that word, but it is definitely a journey. It's not a 1-2 day consultancy, pay me 2 days consultancy and I'm going to solve this for you. It's, I'm going to help you define what you need to have or what you want before you then decide. And we're not going to touch technology until right at the end. Right. So it's a real design approach rather than throw technology and be it Claude, be it Copilot, make decisions up front. Don't go anywhere near that until you understand, coherently what it is they're trying to achieve. And every company is different. I went to a company recently who asked me to come along, and they said they wanted an AI strategy. And I didn't get to meet, I was meant to meet the CEO of the company to get there. So I was completely ready to have a AI readiness assessment with them from a, C-suite kind of level. And the person couldn't make it, and they sent along their IT manager. And the IT manager was new, fairly new. And he was quite open with me and effectively said, look, Andy, what is your view in doing this? And I gave him my view about how to approach it at a high level. And he said, well, I'll be honest with you, we've got, from our device management point of view, we're migrating to a new system. We've got devices that are all different manufacturers, right? We've got people that aren't, they're saving data to their laptops, to OneDrive, all over the place, right? So how can we rely on data on the back end and people's own data that is being shared, collaborated accordingly? And I said, you need to sort that out first. That needs to be normalized to a point where you're happy that it's being managed. Your level of how far you want to go with that management, how intrinsic and controlling you want to be with that data. And then you can start making the decisions about, okay, we're happy with our data. Now we're having a problem sending everything to our accountancy system or to our HR system. People aren't being paid their expenses or some simple problem like that. And then you can start tackling those problems, right? But until you understand it properly, it's not worth talking about technology.
This brings a very interesting point, and using uh, AI specifically, I think it's very easy to get lost in, because it throws a lot of jazzy stuff at you, and then you start thinking that you're creating something really super fantastic. The requirement has to be super clear. So you keep on fighting, keep on analyzing, keep on experimenting until unless you reach to a point where you're happy with the requirement first. And then building comes later. So specifically to the Intune story you just mentioned, I think the access rules, the kind of structure, what kind of information they want to segregate to which audience, they have to be super clear internally how they want that information to flow, and then they can go back and execute a strategy around it. That's pretty interesting. I think I have time for a couple of questions, but I'll keep it very short before we go to rapid fire section, Dandy. uh, One thing pretty quick, which is one thing in IT that has never changed in 30 years, even though AI is here.
Football. There you go. Football's still the same.
Anyways, a lot of IT guys really spend time watching football, so I take that as an answer. But one last question from me before we move to the rapid round, right? You mentioned that industries are merging, right? Companies from different sectors have started looking same, right? Can you give me an example? What is the thought behind it, and how do we interpret it as an audience?
The nature of the fact that companies are bringing not necessarily what you call IT back in house, right? The visioning or everything is based on IT nowadays, right? Be it on the mobile phone or on the internet. So a service of some kind, which you can't just run something. It might be manual, but you've got to have your internet facing part of your shop as well. So there's a bigger element on an emphasis and budget that needs to go on that. And social media plays a huge part in how you market your company. So you have to be a part of that. And people are bringing that more and more intrinsically into the house. Social media people that have IT, they're IT savvy, right? They're taking on some technical capabilities that before might have been IT people. And they're saying, "What, you need a new website? I can throw a new website out for you. What, you need it? You need a new email? So yeah, I'll get you an email because everything's online." So things like that are mainstay consumption services that have been around for years and years, and have just evolved. I think people just do that naturally, and I think it'll become more and more part of people's natural abilities within their role. So the outsourcing of that becomes harder to sell unless you're just selling it off the shelf. That is something that every company or most companies are generally doing, depending on your size, right? Most companies are doing an element of that now. Social media, websites, integration because the tools are there. And social media is driving a lot of it. So yes, if I'm a construction company as opposed to an events company, obviously my core business is different. But actually what circles that is your outward facing shop store, if you like, of your company, but also the IT that you run internally, the people that you employ. So someone on the desktop in your company is going to be using Office. They're going to be creating project. They're going to be maybe using a bit of Copilot to solve their reports and their accounts in the same way that a company from a totally different industry is doing. And that was the same before, right? But now they have the ability to taking knowledge from all different industries at the same time and compare and contrast. So I think it's just part of everyday. IT is becoming more and more part of our everyday role in lots of different existing roles. And that alone tells me that a portion of companies' employees, they could be lifted and shifted and go from one industry to the next and do exactly the same thing.
I think this has been a very interesting to and fro. And one thing that I completely missed out was the use of agentic AI in making the industries merged or making them compact. Like, as you mentioned, that, some of these services are coming in house because of the kind of tools that are available in the market now, you specifically AI. And everybody can understand the function of other vertical very quickly by the application of AI, of course. So, in this world where we are looking at automating, reducing efforts, agentic AI, how you have used it? What are the specific use cases you think are sellable in the market?
Oh yeah, if I had the answer to this, I'd be very rich, right? And I'm not. So I can do okay, I think we all have to eat, right? So the food industry is always going to be on a winner. If you're making food that people like, you're always going to have money coming into your bank account. In companies, we are more and more regulated. So we have to have human resources, right? We have to have compensation, salaries, and meet governance standards and all that sort of thing. That's becoming more and more of a mainstay. So I think if you create agents in and around stuff that is always going to be there, you're not going to go far wrong. But at the same time, you're going to get a lot of options from people that are doing exactly the same. So you've got choice. So that means that you've got choice, but you don't necessarily have something yourself that is marketable or something you can make a lot of money at. It's going to be the people that come up with those brilliant ideas, right? That will that will emerge in a different area of innovation. And I think AI is helping us do that. I mean, and I've created a HR tool with some AI built into it, some automation. I've done some event stuff as well. And I guess I haven't really teased my brain to the point of really try and understand what the next best thing is. But I'll be honest with you, I do have an idea, right? I have an idea, and it's based around. I can give you a little insight, right? It's based around companies that are or industries that are slow to the market with IT, despite the fact that because a lot of companies are they are naturally picking up. I need to have a bit of AI. I need to have a bit of automation, right? Because if they don't, they'll fall behind. So everyone will do that, and they'll do that at certain paces. But there are certain industries that are just historically are slow to pick up on it. And if you pick companies there and you can create something that is more relevant to them, right, then I think that's probably a good area to get into.
Right. So let me summarize, right? Basically, you're saying go for an industry vertical solution, which is going to sustain for a longer period of time. Maybe look at shipping or some sort of that industry which has been very slow in terms of adapting the new age IT, and maybe try to solve a problem statement there. And maybe once you come up with that $1 million idea, Andy, just make me your partner as well. I think we can $5, right?
Totally. Well, same for you. Same for you. I'll call you up. You can call me up too.
So I'm going to take another 2 minutes of yours. This is our special segment, which is rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you one liner. It has to be within 20 seconds that you have to maximum reply, and then we will close out the session, right?
Okay.
So my first question is biggest myth about Microsoft Intune.
How long it takes to sync a device.
Okay, that's interesting. One thing in IT that has never changed in 30 years, I think we have already answered that, so I'll move on. Which is football, right? So I answer it for you. The tool you reach for the first when something breaks.
I'm not great at that area. I'm not good at troubleshooting, but I always look at logs. I'll look at the logs, but I don't have a go-to in terms of how I translate those logs.
Mine is to restart the system. That's what Microsoft has taught me. If anything is breaking, you just restart it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it obviously depends on whether you're looking at one device or multiple devices, but yeah.
One piece of advice for someone starting in IT today.
Be curious and challenge.
That is very required. AI in 2030, genuine, transformative, or mostly noise?
Transformative for sure. Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, which brings me to the last rapid fire, so you can breathe easy. First device you ever managed?
Ever managed servers? So way back in no, it wasn't servers. It was a mainframe. It was a mainframe had Kix COBOL on it. IBM mainframes.
I've heard a lot about mainframes, and thank God I am from a generation which really have to work only with the SaaS, haven't had to do mainframes. So thank God for that. But Andy, thank you so much for your time along the podcast. It was a very informative one. And I, for one, was very excited and anxious before the start. And you really made me feel very, very
Why anxious? Why anxious?
because I'm talking to a 30 years veteran. I don't know what ball. For example, the SaaS question was very interesting one. I have been writing, thinking about it, and when you're talking to somebody, it's always who's just senior in the industry, who really have been there and done that. It's always trying to figure out whether you're saying the right words. So
Yeah, there's no anxiety needed. I form. I think, going, not extending this too much, but I think the thing advice that I would give is, um, just because be curious, but be curious to learn, but be curious to learn from other people and take in their opinions and ideas, because you can only formulate a full solution or full idea by getting other people's opinions, not just by being headstrong and thinking, no, I am going to do this regardless. You have to kind of work with people, and this is it's probably something that is not so needed in nowadays, but it is needed. It's thought it's not needed, but you always need to collaborate and get other people's injections into ideas. Yeah. So
I
be curious
completely.
of other people.
That's a very sane advice, Andy. Thank you so much for your time on the podcast. I really had a lot of fun, except the anxiety part was there for a bit, but really had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time on the
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah,
show.
I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you. Yes.
Thank you.